For anyone, that's kind of like curious about, just getting a little off the beaten path. Like, I highly recommend AmeriCorps and or Peace Corps, right? Like, they are government supported opportunities to go off that path, and I think that it's, I think that, and from the human element, like in AmeriCorps, it's the same. It's like you get, usually you're, or at least, you're with people in a context that kind of like, encourages humility and, check your ego at the door and kind of like see things from a different standpoint of like the, standard track, school, work, rat race, get up, and get your, get yours and fast forward to the end of, to the end of time, right? It's like, it's something different, and it's important, and it's about connecting with people.
According to the computer. We are back with another AmeriCorps Connections podcast. Thank you all for making this podcast number one in the ratings. Actually, I'm just kidding. I don't know what we're rated right now, but we're doing really, really well. So we have over 2,000 downloads, which is pretty amazing. And the YouTube community is really growing. So if you are watching this on YouTube, please hit subscribe. It actually does make a difference on the channel. And if you're listening on all the other platforms, comment or share or do whatever you want to do on those. But I'm Nicki Fiocco, and I am the founder and creator of the AmeriCorps Connections podcast, where we interview AmeriCorps alums to hear about their service stories and then find out how that service impacted them and what they're up to now and where they are. And believe it or not, because of the podcast, some folks are actually meeting each other in person and collaborating on projects. So if that's you, if that's something that you either listen to a podcast and then you got to meet somebody who is on the podcast, please let me know, make a comment, because this train is on the tracks and it is going fast. So thank you so much for Sharon Tewksbury Bloom from Do Good, Be Good, who recently this year is supporting on the back end with her all AmeriCorps alum staff who do some editing and some marketing of the videos or of the podcast. So thank you, Sharon, for being a guest and for believing in me and the podcast and the content. And then one last thank you before I introduce our guest, Justin. I forgot who I was going to thank. Oh, I was just going to thank everybody who has been reaching out to me via Instagram or via LinkedIn and Instagram, and just, letting me know that this content is something that they want to continue to hear. So we have a very special series. This series is the dual service folks that have done AmeriCorps and Peace Corps. So we've got a couple interviews, and please let me know what you think about those. So today, without any further ado, I'm super excited personally to have a conversation with Justin and learn about your experience. So Justin, let's go right into your service experience. I think you did 2 years of AmeriCorps, and
Yep.
you also did some other international service, and then you went into Peace Corps. So how did you find out about AmeriCorps, and what made you want to serve?
Um, First off, Nicki, thank you so much for this opportunity. Great to meet you. And no, really appreciate, being able to talk about AmeriCorps, Peace Corps. I think giving back is super important. And it was, formative in my life, right? And my career path. To answer your question, I think I have vague, I have vague memories of where I first heard about AmeriCorps. Um, maybe on like a billboard somewhere, or maybe I kind of heard about it. This was a bajillion years ago, and I'm preparing to date myself right now. It was like I graduated from high school in '97, and so basically I was thinking about college, and long story short, I realized that I could do, I was thinking about college, but I was also thinking like, do I want to jump straight from high school to college? And I heard about AmeriCorps, and it sounded really interesting to me, but I also realized that I could leverage AmeriCorps to get in-state tuition at the school that I attended.
So for
Me, it was like, maybe I saw it on, maybe I saw it on a billboard or somewhere, maybe I was, talking to people. It was so long ago, I can't remember. But once those dots connected for me, I was like, okay, this is a great path.
that is such a good point, and we don't bring it up as often as we should in the podcast to really sell AmeriCorps to folks. Especially, I love how you said you were like, I think I want to go to college, but I don't know if I'm going to do it right now. And so
Yeah.
folks that don't know, that might just be like, what is this, Amera what? And
Right.
and how do you leverage it? Well, after you do a service year, you get an education award.
That
And you
too.
can,
Yep.
yep, you get an education award, and you can use that to put towards your tuition or books or whatever. And if you don't know, there's a schools for national service, so you can go to schools for national service and you can find out what schools actually sometimes match the Siegel Education Award, which is I think up to about 7,000 right now, which isn't a
Oh,
ton,
wow.
but you can get, you can get some schools. The University of Maryland's School of Education, I believe, matches or gives at least 4,000 to AmeriCorps alums who come in. So yes, that's amazing. And how fortuitous, I don't know if that's the right word, intuitive for an 18-year-old to think,
I mean, I'm not going to take all the credit there. I distinctly remember my dad,
okay,
helping me piece these things together. Like we were talking about schools, and he'd ask questions, and I think I had probably mentioned, AmeriCorps. I heard about this thing, and given that I was looking at a school out of state, it was like he was like, well, you could do this, right? And I'm sure from his perspective, he's like, well, how do I support my son, but in a way that's not just I'm just gonna go, whatever for a year. It's like, oh no,
yeah.
giving back, community service, and you get an education award, at the end of it. Plus, you're gonna save all this money in state versus out of state tuition. It was like, I think for that's I think where probably the encouragement came from.
Oh, dad.
Oh, go dad, exactly.
Oh, dad. So you did NCCC, which is National Civilian Conservation Corps. Is that right?
Well, that was actually the second year. So
Oh, okay.
97 to 98, I was a core member at it's called Operation Fresh. It is in Madison, Wisconsin, on the east side. So you you may connect that, connecting dots. You may be like, oh, okay, so you were trying to go to the UW Madison, the Badgers. So on the east side of Madison, and what it was is an opportunity for for individuals to get a hands-on understanding of build sites, familiarity with the
Oh,
trades, and comfort with tools, work, doing, working on house building projects, right?
okay.
And so my sense of it is that this program had existed. Operation Fresh Start had existed before AmeriCorps, and I assume that they still exist now. But I imagine that their leadership, the ED was named Connie Ferris Bailey, probably made the strategic decision like, oh, okay, the federal government is opening up this AmeriCorps program. Remember, this is 97. So I think it was still relatively new at the time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
94.
Oh,
Yep.
how can we, adapt, open our program, to benefit from federal funding, and have folks and invite, folks that are interested in getting involved with our work. And so that's kind of, that's kind of how it all happened from what
So,
I see.
what did you do as a member? Were you helping rebuild places?
Yeah, they were building new homes, right? It
Okay.
was, I would show up at the offices of Operation Fresh Start. I think traditionally they had, worked with youth who had gone through some challenges, basically needed a fresh start, right? Like, they were kind of headed in one direction. And then this opportunity was, look, we're going to help you get, and they had, a kind of a tutoring program internally at the office, right?
Okay.
Offering these individuals a chance to get their GED. And we will also give you experience on the build site that you could parlay into employment in the trades, right? So you'll literally get hands-on experience working with all sorts of construction tools, building walls, fit. I remember some of my first days I was working on mudding and taping inside of a residential house, right? Working with drywall, applying mud, let it dry, sand it, do it again, repeat, rinse and repeat, right? Right across the street, like across like a highway from an Oscar Mayer plant. I remember it smelled horrible. It smelled horrible. And one of the guys on a team or on the team or somebody I work with there had been like, yeah, man, I actually used to work there. He's like, bologna? I'm like, yeah. He's like, it comes in a powder and then they mix water so it's a liquid and then it sets.
Oh my
And
God.
that is right. I was like, oh my God.
Oh my God, that
So no
really.
shade, Oscar. I'm sorry, Oscar Mayer. No, I'm sorry. I'm going to get myself in
I was
trouble.
on the Jersey Turnpike last weekend, and there was an Oscar Mayer Wiener car on the Jersey. I was like, really? It was
Hey,
in the
yeah, no,
truck and bus lane. Wow, that's wild. And I have so many questions for you, because this is where your service started in building homes. And then now you work for Habitat for Humanity, which, for folks that don't know, that they build homes and help repair and do all kinds of things. So I feel like you had no idea that you had no idea what an impact that this was. Not even
it's
an
true.
impact,
No, no,
but
no.
this
It,
thread.
it, it's true. It's true. And actually, and I've never actually communicated Habitat office. We call it
Oh, funny.
internally at Habitat. We call them affiliates. But I Operation Fresh Start actually would, because it was a 1,700-hour commitment, right?
Okay.
A standard commitment of a
Yep.
number of hours to complete your service year. They said that you could work towards that 1,700 hours sometimes on Saturdays with the local Habitat for Humanity affiliate, like
Oh, how
Habitat of
funny.
Dane County, right? So I distinctly remember going to working on Habitat houses back in the winter of 97 and the spring of 98. Absolutely. But I've
So,
never, in my current role at Habitat for Humanity International, just I work in resource development for Habitat for Humanity. Our work is to create strength, stability, and self reliance through shelter. But I've never actually reached back out to Habitat of Dane County and said, hey, I was back 20 plus years ago, working with you guys. Never done that
that's
though.
funny. So I heard this analogy, and I've been sharing it with everybody because I think it's like a really amazing perspective. It's a little spiritual for folks, not religious, but spiritual. So he was talking about how our realities are all happening at the same time. Like
Mm,
there's no real past, present, or future. There's really only kind
mm,
of present. And it's when we are synced up to our future that we can see
mm,
it, right? Because if it's like the old thing about the teacher will show itself when the student is ready. If you're not ready for the message, or you're
mm,
not ready for the thing, you're not going to see it. And he says
mm.
it like this, and it makes me think about you with what you're doing now in that moment. So if you are looking down and you see an ant, and you see an ant crawl out of its hole, and it's going towards like some cookie crumbs, you're looking at the ant's past, which is the ant hole, and the ant's present, because the ant is like, I smell, or
Right,
I
right,
sense crumbs, but I don't know where they
right.
are. So that's the
A
future.
snack.
Yes, a snack. So that's the ant's future. So if you take the crumbs and you move it closer to the ant, then his future syncs up faster than it would if he went there on his own. So I'm just thinking about how your future was out there on the horizon and
Mm.
you had no idea. Ah, this is
Yeah,
so cool.
yeah,
Anyways,
yeah. No,
that's
it's
kind of how I think
interesting.
about things
Coming
when I'm
full
not.
circle, full
Full
circle.
circle, exactly. So okay, so you did that. You did 1,700 hours, which equals about
Right.
a year.
Yeah.
What were some ups and downs? What are some memories? Anything you want to conjure?
Yeah. No, first time away from home, far away. I actually, there was someone that I had, was kind of left home with, like a buddy I had known, we're going to go and do this together, be at Operation Fresh Start. And, a few months in, he was like, this isn't for me. And he went home.
Oh.
And so then I was kind of, going solo, flying solo for a while. I was making friends, but it was challenging first experience away from home. So that was hard for sure. Being in a new place, a new city. But it was a period of time in my life, support from family from afar. Madison has a lot of stuff going on, so I really enjoyed that. And I always had in my mind, fall of '98, I'm going to school, man. I'm getting, I'm going to university, and I think it was important for me to like get that feeling like I'm not just, I'm kind of experiencing a little of real life. Like,
Mm.
not that AmeriCorps necessarily is real life, but it's different that, there is a track of, high school, college, job,
Yes.
and I was like, I sensed that there was more out there. So that's, I
Love
guess,
that.
a better way to frame it is I wanted to see that what's out there. I want to see that. I want to experience things off that beaten tracks, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
So I was glad to be able to scratch that itch, so to speak, and know that, oh, okay, I can still continue on the broader path of, getting a higher education, and getting that, college experience, et cetera, et cetera.
Such a good point, about like how people do their lives, and how we're supposed to do our lives. I went back to school. I did AmeriCorps when I was like 32 years old.
Mm.
And then I went back to school. I went back to school and then I did AmeriCorps. Yes. I went back to school. I got my degree when I was like 32, and then I did uh AmeriCorps after that. So I was a very much not your traditional AmeriCorps member. But now, like, I really think that there's AmeriCorps members of all ages, right? Like the program that I was
Absolutely.
director for, you had to be 17 years old, and I would just say cognitively and physically functioning. I don't care how old you are, as long as you can open a computer and walk into no, you don't even have to walk, but get into the training room. Um, and then also, like, going back to school for me, I didn't even know that it was actually something that I wanted to do until like getting my undergraduate, until I was sitting around a fire one fall and everybody, my peers were all talking about their experiences in college. And I was like, well, I want a degree. Like, literally,
Mm.
that's how I came up with,
Mm.
oh, I should probably go back to school. And I didn't even know how to apply. I was like, I walked on campus and I was like, where's the paperwork that I need to fill out for an application? They're like, you have to go online, you old lady. I was like,
uh,
oh, okay. And so
I brought
it,
my ballpoint pen.
yes, totally. I was like, and so there is no right way, and
Yeah,
I,
absolutely.
I want, but like, I hope people are starting to understand that, and they don't get too hard on themselves if they're not ready to go to college right after
Absolutely.
school, or if they
Absolutely.
want to go back to school and they're 50 years old and they're like, I couldn't do it. You know what? Do it.
Yeah.
It's good for your brain anyways. So sorry, tangents. Doing a lot of tangents
No, no,
today.
no. But I mean, that's actually, a good segue in the sense that, like, I did, my first year of AmeriCorps with that local program, Operation Fresh Start, 97 to 98. Then I went to undergrad, and
Mhm.
then, um, yeah, no, finished in 2002, and then, kind of doing things for the second half of 2002. But I had applied at the end of school. I had already applied. I knew that I wanted to go back to AmeriCorps. I was like,
That's
the
cool.
first time around was cool, but like there's other programs and other things. And I had heard about AmeriCorps NCCC and, the National Civilian Community Corps. And so I applied for that for the year after undergrad. And for the, folks listening, like, it's set up that there are, at least back in the day, it used to be, there were 5 campuses representing different regions of the United States. And so, you kind of would apply and, rank which ones that you were interested in. And so, I was like, oh, okay, I'm kind of interested in the East Coast or the South. And I think I ranked those higher. And, I was also cognizant that, there's core member level, but there's also team leader level. And so,
Mm,
the ambitious side of me was like, oh, okay, maybe I'll apply to be a team leader, reference my first year of AmeriCorps. And so, I was really pleased to find out that, I got awarded a position as a team leader with the Northeast region,
okay.
which is headquartered out of Perry Point in Maryland on I think it was actually like when I was there, I think it's like a former military base is my understanding there. Um, and that was in 2003. I think that's title year 9, year not maybe or 7 or not. I can't remember, but so that was my
Oh,
second year of
gotcha.
AmeriCorps was basically January through November of 2003. But I absolutely I took time off, like, right, and there's no some people do AmeriCorps back to back, year one over 1 year after the next, but there is no defined way to do it. Like, you can split it up, you can take time, you can do it when you're older, whenever.
Hmm. So did you, what were some of your projects for NCCC? And by the way, that base, as you probably know, closed. So we don't have
Oh yeah,
we
that
don't have
vaguely.
a campus out here in Maryland anymore. Boo!
Uh, yeah, no, actually, that vaguely sounds vaguely familiar. But thank you for the update. Some of the project. Let's see. First project. They had 4 projects. It was the year was set up where you got to Perry Point in January, and you had kind of orientation, as a team leader, and then they had the core members showed up. I think we came at different times, but maybe it was at the same time. I can't remember, but anyway, I remember getting oriented as a team leader with my fellow team leaders, and then core members were there, and getting assigned to a team. Ours was they had I think it was like I want to say where they had like water teams and fire teams, and I was on a
Makes sense.
fire team. I was fire team 5, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
Um, and so then we did. So you had like orientation, got to the whole storming, forming, norming, storming, performing, kind of with your team, and then you get sent out on spikes, right, where you're going out to do projects in different areas throughout the region. Forgive me, audience, if everybody already knows all these details. But our first project was with like an environmental education camp in Sharon, Massachusetts, called Horizons for Youth. Right.
okay.
So it was, their mission was to, provide, environmental education. Sometimes they would host like elementary schools or, community groups or whatever. So we were there living on, some of their cabins for like 7 or 8 weeks. And they're just helping around the camp, doing various projects. Um, this is going to make you laugh. The third project was supporting Habitat for Humanity of Albany, New York. Right. So then we like jumped in our 15 passenger van, like, at the end of Spike 2, I think we went back to Perry Point to regroup, whatever. But then they're like, Spike 3, you're headed up to Albany. And it was to support a Habitat for Humanity affiliate. So, working on builds, supporting their work, advancing their projects. So just kind of all facets of, general house construction.
Yeah. That's so funny. And we still have to go through your Peace Corps experience, and folks
All right.
probably
I'll
think,
speed it up.
well,
I'll
no, no,
speed
no,
it up.
you're good. No, you're good. I was just going to say, folks probably think that, oh, and then he went to go work for Habitat for Humanity. But there's a
No,
span of
no, yeah, no.
time. There's a good
Lot of
span of time there that I'm just like so impressed with all of the different things that you have done between the time you were doing your AmeriCorps year up until what you're doing now. Um, so just real quick to close out your NCCC
Yep.
year, what's something that I've recently started asking this question, like, what is something that you recall viewing differently after your NCCC year? Like how was your how was your outlook on things?
Yeah.
How did it shift?
It how to be on a team, or more specifically, how to manage a team.
Mm.
And what I mean is that, I came into NCCC, it was really, really my first like managerial experience.
Hmm.
And I think the structure of NCCC, in the sense that you live with the team, like you have your own room, like guidelines are like, oh, team leaders get to have their own room. Like all the core members, maybe in certain circumstances, they're literally could be just sharing one whole room to themselves. Like you were supposed to have a room for privacy, but you're basically living with your team 24/7, right? So I think I learned real quick that if you are not a, very holistic view, outlook boss, like you're like being harsh or mean or not thinking about how, people might receive, the things that
Mm.
what you're communicating, like you're going to be sitting next to these people watching TV that evening.
Yeah.
So
And
the chickens come home to roost real quick, right? So I think that for me, that was like that year was a real learning year for me to be like, oh, okay, like it's not just, this needs to, whatever, It's like, no, think of this about, think about this a little more. Take the blinders off, Justin. Like think about this a
yeah,
little more holistically.
I love that. And that can go over to any relationships really, because we do have to look at relationships holistically, because
Absolutely.
we're bringing something to the relationship on a daily basis from our perspective. Like I can only see through Nikki's eyes.
Yeah.
So I have to think about when I'm working with other people or in relationship with other people, not just love relationships, but like anything, friendships,
Yeah.
like how am I showing up for people and how might they be perceiving me in this moment?
Right.
So
Absolutely.
what an
Absolutely.
amazing, like what a good thing to learn at a young age, right? And I think that your dad did a great job, because that
Uh,
also is very,
uh,
and your mother too,
yeah.
and your mother too. Um, uh, I think that's also at a young age to leave NCCC with that kind of viewpoint is very mature, not mature and
It
like,
was no, I mean, it was a tough year. No, I mean, it was a tough year, and I think I learned a lot. Like, I mean, it was positive, it was good,
yeah.
but I definitely learned a lot that year.
Yeah, I'm a big believer. The obstacle is the way. Like the
Mm,
hard
mm,
thing makes you better.
mm.
It just does. Or it
Yeah.
makes you know like what you don't want, right? Like
Yes.
you can get
Right.
through a hard situation and then just be okay, I never want to feel that again. Woof.
Right.
Right.
Mhm. Mhm.
So okay, so after your two AmeriCorps years, you're a young managerial professional now.
I had some experience, in depth, right, managerial experience, yes. But so after that point, it's a really long story, but I was traveling, I was working various jobs, kind of trying different stuff out. I went home. Do I want to live at home? Do I want to live somewhere else? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. School, there was a whole lot of things. So I'm fast forwarding
Okay.
to, basically I was living in Portland, Oregon, and I thought about, grad school had been on my mind, and this and that, but I've been in this job, but I was like, you know what, I'm ready for a transition. And I did some, looking around, did research. I'd heard about this program called the Peace Corps Masters International,
Oh, wow.
right? And so yes, I was at my job. I knew that I wanted to, you know, transition into go. Knew I wanted to go to grad school. I was like, I gotta, figure that piece out long term. But I also kind of had this sense from having met Peace Corps volunteers over the years that it was a foregone conclusion. Like at some point, I will
Mm,
do Peace Corps. Like I just kind of knew that.
cool.
Um, and so hearing about that program, like how, the vision of which being, how can the course of study for a master's and the experience of Peace Corps complement one another,
Yeah.
right? That to me, that value proposition was, I was like, that's for me. That's what I want to do. So then I was looking at schools, looking at, different locations. Long story short, I ended up at Georgia State in Atlanta. And, great school, go Panthers. Um, and, getting my master's in public administration with a concentration in nonprofit management, because I've been working in nonprofits in that fast forward period. But then, at the same time, I was also applying to Peace Corps per the program, right? So it dictated that. I don't know if that program's still around, but it said, do a year of coursework for your
Mhm.
master's, then do your 2 years of Peace Corps, and then come back to school for your final semester to culminate.
Wow, that's really intense.
I mean, I thought it was really exciting and made a lot of
Yeah,
sense. I was like, yeah, I want to do masters, but then I also want to do Peace Corps. And so how can these two, like, this makes
yeah.
a lot of sense? How
That's
can the two work together, right?
so
So go ahead.
was it the idea that you do your first year of your program to kind of get the theories down, and then you go over and serve in Peace Corps, and then you put what you learned into practice, or was it not
Yeah,
like that at all?
I mean, like, Peace Corps can be a lot of different things. For everyone's Peace Corps experience is individual, and it can be a lot of different things. Like, you can get assigned to a lot of different types of, you know programs within Peace Corps, right? Um, I think that I was assigned, to your point, I think I was assigned to a program that was trying to align with my course of study, right? Like, I'm getting my master's in public administration, right? Like, how do, you know, basically an MBA for the nonprofit or the public sector, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, how do these organizations operate, and how do you, push things for, how do you optimize, what's the best practices, etc., right? And so when I did receive my Peace Corps assignment, I was assigned to be a municipal development volunteer. I was assigned to Guatemala. So I was in, the department, which is like, the state of, San Marcos, you could call it. And I was in the community of El Tumbador. It's out on the west coast of Guatemala, like bordering Mexico, towards towards the south, right on the coastal plain. And so I was working with villages around, village leaders around El Tumbador, saying like, oh, okay, this is how you do like a strength, a SWOT analysis. What are your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats? Like, then how do you determine, what it is that you're, how do you do a community needs assessment, right?
Mhm.
How do you decide what you need? And then how do you create like a project timeline, get, organize, how do you, plan for implementation? And then how do you, request funds from the government or from other village, from like regional leaders, that sort of thing, right?
So you were there for 2 years, and
Yes.
through this series of the dual service, I have heard really reflections on how it wasn't only about going over there to help the community do something. It was kind of life changing for the folks
Mm,
that went over there. And it was more of like, oh wow, like I think I did something over there, but wow, I came back different. So what were some
yeah.
things that you can reflect on that were kind of like aha moments for you, where you maybe went into a situation where you thought it was going to be a certain way and then it wasn't, or something that kind of, I don't know, changed your perspective or something?
Yeah, no. Again, Peace Corps is different for everybody,
Right.
on a lot of different levels. Um, I think my Spanish got a lot better because, I'm like
Good.
living in a community, people don't really speak English, so you got to speak Spanish. Um, and so I got a lot of practice, Spanish practice, which is great. Um, Cultural humility, right? Like, hey, your view of the world is 100% not the only way, right? So
Yep.
learning about that, that to have been welcomed, by a
Yeah.
community. And I think for anyone that is considering an international career, um, doing international development work, like, it is a great opportunity to leverage, thanks to the US government, to be able to, have that support, like have your medical insurance, have that, we have place in the community, have like safety guidelines, like have like, a whole apparatus that is designed to kind of support you getting those like very complex and nuanced lessons about really what the context is like
Yeah.
internationally in the development space.
Yeah. That makes so much sense because, you can have book sense and you can study international development or international relations
Oh
but
yeah,
unless you're like put in a situation, and Peace Corps is different than maybe going over for an internship or a study abroad sort of a situation, because you really are in a community with obvious supports from Peace Corps, but it's not, you're not in an institute, you're working amongst the community, you are the community.
Yeah. No, and I mean, and let me be clear. Like, I think that there is absolutely space for Peace Corps volunteers to be able to contribute ideas that can be beneficial to the
Hmm.
community.
Hmm.
But that only comes with time. And once you have
Yeah.
built trust and relationships with the community and demonstrated respect, right?
Yes.
Once there is that, the word in Spanish is confianza, trust, basically, right? Like once you have confianza, then it's like, what I imagine, like, your counterpart, that's what, the person that I worked with, that I was essentially assigned to,
Hmm.
in my town, is your counterpart. Um, was like my counterpart was like the director of the Office of Municipal Planning, right?
Okay.
And so what I imagine him thinking is, all right, here comes this guy, his Spanish is marginal, right? And he doesn't know diddly squat about Guatemala, and so sure, maybe he has some ideas, but let me make sure I'm going to be less, receptive to his ideas until he understands the context in which he
Yeah.
is living.
Yeah. That's a good counterpart, right?
Well, I mean, yeah, no, I mean, I think that, but yeah, I think it just comes down to respect. It would come down to
Yeah.
respect and humility at the end of the day. Um, you know, and, you know, I would like to think that Peace Corps volunteers then later down the road go back to the United States, and they kind of, they just, there's such a like a humanizing element, right? It's
Hmm.
like, you know without like getting into like politics and like a polarized environment, and like xenophobia that exists, it's like, for John Smith in, X community around the United States, when they hear about somebody, their neighbor down the road's kid who went to Peace Corps in Guatemala, and they're back and they run into him and like, hey, how's Guatemala? I have no experience with that. And
Yeah.
that Peace Corps volunteer is like, yeah, it's great. You should come down and visit, and it's amazing in all these ways. And I've had such. It's like you have totally changed that person's perception of this other country. And there's such like a that, and that's actually one of Peace Corps' goals, is like, how can you change my hearts and minds back in the United States? It's like it's an explicit goal of Peace Corps, is like, how can you essentially become an ambassador, for this other culture within the United States? And I think that there is absolutely a need for that. Absolutely, like just like hey man, we're all human beings. We all wake up, eat breakfast, do all the things. So like, let's start treating each other that way. Yeah, that exists. It's like, for John Smith in, X community around the United States, when they hear about somebody, their neighbor down the road's kid who went to Peace Corps in Guatemala, and they're back and they run into him and like, hey, how's Guatemala? I have no experience with that. And
Yeah.
that Peace Corps volunteer is like, yeah, it's great. You should come down and visit, and it's amazing in all these ways. And I've had such. It's like you have totally changed that person's perception of this other country. And there's such like a that and that's actually one of Peace Corps' goals is like, how can you change my hearts and minds back in the United States? It's like it's an explicit goal of Peace Corps is like, how can you essentially become an ambassador, for this other culture within the United States? And I think that there is absolutely a need for that. Absolutely, like just like hey man, we're all human beings. We all wake up, eat breakfast, do all the things. So like, let's start treating each other that way.
Such a good point and a really good we can start to wrap here. I recently became aware of a program called the Empathy Project, and
Mm,
it's this leveraging volunteers, and we just have phone calls with people. It's actually video, but you don't actually see the person. I'm getting trained on it. I haven't done it yet, but you just have a conversation with somebody on the other side of the world to just kind of understand what their life's like. And
yeah,
it's I think that the mission is to connect us through humanity. Um,
absolutely, yeah.
because I've said this before that like we're literally on the mothership and we're all from the same species. We're like human beings, Homo
Yep,
sapiens sapiens. Like we we're all the same, and yeah, I think that we could go off into other tangents about that stuff. But if you don't get out of your comfort zone and you're
yep,
not curious and you're not open to other people, then what are you doing? You're just a closed
yeah,
off human, and humans aren't supposed to be closed off. We have a 6 foot radius that our heart expands energy. So when you kind of like, I mean, it even happens on video, right? Like we just started talking, Justin, and I was like, I gotta hit record, like this is working. But like when you feel the vibe, it's because
mm,
your frequencies are very similar and somebody's
mm,
open and they're putting off this energy from their heart center, and it's a field that's like 6 feet around
yeah,
us all the time. So
yep.
anyways, let's land the ship. What are some things that last few things that you want viewers to know about either what you're up to now or just recapping your experience? Like what do you take away, 10 years down the road?
I just feel like I have been, I'm a very fortunate person, had a lot, just I feel very, very fortunate. And for anyone, that's kind of like curious about, just getting a little off the beaten path, like I highly recommend AmeriCorps and or Peace Corps, right? Like they are government supported opportunities to go off that path, and I think that it's I think that, and from the human element, like in AmeriCorps, it's the same. It's like you get, usually you're, or at least, you're with people in a context that kind of like, encourages humility and, check your ego at the door and kind of like see things, from a different standpoint of like the, you know, standard track, school, 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 work, 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 rat race, get up and get your, get yours and fast forward to the end of, the end of time, right? It's like, it's something different and it's important and it's about connecting with people.
That's perfect. That's absolutely perfect. Yeah, I think we're good. Anything else? I think we did it.
No, I think we're good.